Hi folks, it's Mike here with another tutorial of the Korg MS2000 mod sequencer. This time I'll be showing you how to make chord sequences on the mod sequencer. We will accomplish this by putting the synthesizer into dual mode, which will give us two independent timbres, each of which can play two notes. By cleverly detuning oscillator 2, we will be able to make chords comprised of 4 notes. The mod sequencer will then modify those chords while the keyboard will transpose them. If you haven't already seen my other tutorial video on the mod sequencer, I highly recommend it, as some of the concepts I will be using are explained there in detail. Since we will be programming notes into the mod sequencer, I first need to explain how you enter the notes. Referring to the diagram here, you can see I have two chords, a C major chord and an F major chord. In order to program these chords, I first split the chord into two parts, each containing 2 notes. For the C major chord, I'll assign the low C and E to timbre 1, while timbre 2 gets the G and high C. You'll notice I have identified the low C as the bass note. The bass note can be anything you want, but once you pick it, you have to reference all the notes to it. For timbre 1, we will use the pitch parameter of the mod sequencer to play the lowest note, low C, and the oscillator 2 Semi parameter to play the second note, E in this case. The pitch parameter is always set relative to the bass note, so the low C gets a pitch of 0. The oscillator 2 Semi is set relative to the timbre 1 pitch. In this case, the E is 4 semitones above the low C, so it gets a value of +4. Timbre 2 pitch, the G in this case, is set relative to the bass note again at +7 semitones. Timbre 2 oscillator 2 Semi is set relative to timbre 2 pitch, so the high C is set to +5, 5 semitones above the G. We use the same procedure for the next chord. Once again, timbre 1 pitch is set relative to the bass note, so the F becomes +5, since it is 5 semitones above the bass note. The other notes are programmed in a similar fashion, resulting in the numbers shown in the table. You may want to pause the video to study this before we move on. Okay, let's program the synthesizer with the chord sequence. If you are following along on your own synthesizer, I will walk you through the synthesizer settings. So let's start by powering on the MS2000. So I'll turn it off, turn it back on. It says Korg MS2000 BR. We'll start by pressing global parameter G3C, which is clock, and set that to internal. So that's G1, G2, G3, and then B, C, set it to internal. Then press exit. Next we'll choose the init program, which is H16 on my synthesizer, so I'll go to bank H and 16, it's the init program. We'll press the edit button to get out of program mode, and then the common button, which is button number 1, and we'll set parameter E1A, which is mode. Right now it's single, we want to set it to dual, which is the third choice. And then we want to set E1B, which is the next parameter, to timbre voice and 2+2, which is what it's set to. Okay, now make sure we select timbre number 1 by pressing the select button here until the light next to number 1 is on. And let's set the oscillator 2 level, which is parameter E7B to 127. We're still in edit mode, so oscillator 2, the level, we're going to make sure E7B is set to 127. And we're going to set oscillator 2's tune to +3 semitones. I may explain why I do that later, but for now just take my word for it. So oscillator 2 tune, set it to about +3. Now we'll select timbre number 2 by pressing the select timbre select button. And we'll do the same thing for timbre number 2 we did for timbre number 1. Make sure oscillator 2's level is set to 127 and that its tune is set to +3. You have to do this for each timbre, otherwise it'll only be done for one. Okay, now let's go to the mod sequencer. And for timbre 1, let's get back to timbre 1. We'll go to the mod sequencer and we'll select by pressing the sequence button. Parameter E18A, we want the last step to be step 8. Right now it's at 16. Change that to 8. We want the sequence type to be forward. We want the sequence mode to be loop. The key sync mode to be timbre. The resolution to be 1/4 note, which is slower than the current setting. 1/4 note. And finally, we'll turn the mod sequencer on. For timbre number 2, we're going to do something similar. So select timbre number 2. Again, we're going to go over to parameter A, sequence common, last step needs to be 8 also. Also needs to be in the forward mode, also needs to be in the looping mode, also needs to be in timbre mode, and again, 1/4 note resolution. And finally turn the mod sequencer on for timbre number 2. So you'll notice you have to do everything for each timbre independently because each timbre has its own mod sequencer that is independent. Okay, next we'll go to the arpeggiator because we are going to use it. So we'll go over here to arpeggio. Parameter E25A. Want the type to be up. The range to be 1 octave. I'm going to set the tempo pretty slow. We'll set it down to about 50. Doesn't have to be exact, but in that neighborhood. I'm going to set the gate time to 43. Right now it's set at 80. We'll just turn the knob, get it close. You can get it close and then use the buttons to get it exact. Next we're going to target both timbres. Right now it's timbre 1, so we're going to choose both timbres. We're going to make sure key sync is turned on. We're going to make sure resolution is also 1/4 note, so it's the same as the mod sequencer. And we'll just make sure swing is set at 0. Okay, now it's time to program the mod sequencer. So start with timbre 1. Make sure you select timbre number 1. And what we'll do is we'll go over to the first lane, sequence 1. So we'll press the select button until the first light comes on, sequence 1, and we're going to put in the following notes, or pitches, which we calculated the way I demonstrated a moment ago. So I'll do this here, but we'll probably do it off screen. So we're going to do -12, -7. Now we'll go to lane 2 for timbre 1, and we'll program in the oscillator 2 semitone notes. So first thing we have to do is change the knob from cutoff to oscillator 2 semitone, which is right there. And now we'll program in the numbers for oscillator 2 semitone. So the data is going to be 16, 10, and now we'll go to lane number 3. And lane 3, the parameter is going to be step length, which is one of the first parameters. So we go all the way back to the beginning. We find step length for knob number 3. And we'll put in the following data. We'll do 0, 3, 0. We'll go over and select timbre number 2, and we'll repeat the process with timbre number 2's notes. Again, sequence 1 is going to be pitch, which is what we're showing in the display. And the data now is going to be 10, 9. We'll go to sequence 2, which the knob parameter is going to be oscillator 2, semitone, and the data is going to be 5. And lastly, we'll go to sequence number 3, which again is going to be step length. And we're going to program in the same step length as the other timbre, which is going to be 0, 3. So now we've programmed all our notes in. Let's hear what things sound like. So we'll turn on the keyboard and we'll play a note. Alright, so there you go. We have 4-note chords, 8 steps, and some varied timing. Now you just heard what happened when I played one note. Now I'll show you that the keyboard does transpose it. We'll move up the keyboard here. And you can hear that we have a higher pitch this time. Okay, so he transposed with the keyboard. But now let's show you something else interesting. Let's play an octave. Start here and go up to here. Don't know if you noticed that, but when we played an octave, we actually had 8 notes playing. And you might say, 8 notes, how is that possible? The MS2000 can only play 4 notes at a time. So the reason why is each timbre gets 2 notes. Each note gets 2 oscillators. So if you take 2 timbres times 2 notes times 2 oscillators, you get 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8 notes. I can also play an interval that's not an octave. It won't sound good, but you'll definitely hear 8 notes. So there you go, a sequence of 8-note chords. Okay, so now let's turn on the Arpeggiator and have some more fun. Turn it on right there. I'm going to play one note, and let's see what happens. Now, if you were counting, you probably heard 12 different notes, and yet we have an 8-step sequence. So you might be asking yourself, how come I got 12 steps with an 8-step sequence? And the reason why is because steps 2, 4, 7, and 8 are half notes. Remember, we made the step length parameter +3. The rest of the notes are quarter notes. The sequencer is going at a quarter note speed, so it plays each half note twice. I'll do it again. Watch the lights. So you got 12 notes playing there, actually 12 chords playing there. So now if I play intervals with the sequencer on, I'm going to end up getting a new chord sequence. Here, I'll play an interval of 2 notes, 2 and 7 here. Now, depending on which 2 notes I play, I'll get different chord sequences. So here we go again with polyrhythms. If you watch my previous video, we spent a fair amount of time talking about polyrhythms. So we'll always get a 12-note sequence. If we hold down 1 key, 2 keys, 3 keys, or even 4 keys, we'll get different sequences depending on how many keys we hold down. Because if we remember from the previous video, the number of notes you'll get before it repeats is going to be the least common multiple of the number of keys held, and 12. So I'll have to hold 5 notes down in order to get something other than a 12-note sequence. Let me do that here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we wait long enough, this will end up being a 60-note sequence, which I'm not going to wait for the end. But once again, we have polyrhythms, so this is why we're getting such long sequences. Okay, so just to demonstrate, I'm going to change the arpeggiator target. I'm going to change it from what it currently is, which is targeting timbre, both timbres right now. And I'm going to change the target from both to timbre number 1. And now I'm going to play a note, and we're going to see what happens. So now we have one timbre is being arpeggiated with the quarter note tempo. The other timbre is not being arpeggiated at all, and it's just being played as held notes, which is just like having the arpeggiator off. So one final comment is that each timbre can have a sequence of different lengths and different timing. Because the mod sequencer is independent for each timbre, they can be completely different than each other. You can change the number of steps, the timing, the tempo, everything, and have it completely different. So I encourage you to experiment around with this and have some fun. It's a lot of fun to do this. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them. And again, thanks for watching.